The forum will first hear the voluntary national review by Armenia, and it's my pleasure to invite His Excellency Ararat Mirzayan, First Deputy Prime Minister, to make a presentation. Excellency, you have the floor.
It's okay now? Oh. Okay. Honorable Chairperson, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. It is with great pleasure that I address the 2018 High-Level Political Forum and present the Republic of Armenia's first voluntary national review. This gathering is an excellent opportunity to reaffirm Armenia's commitment to the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. The High-Level Political Forum is well placed to address issues of our global agenda and to showcase our collective political will and commitment to a better future for our peoples and our countries. This spring, as many of you are perhaps aware, was an exciting and dramatic time for our republic. Our new government came to power through a democratic and peaceful revolution that captures the imagination of many in Armenia and beyond. I see clear parallels between our revolution and what we are doing right now, right in this hall. Let me dwell upon it in some more detail. In my country, for many years, we dreamt of a democratic Armenia with the rule of law, respect for human rights, including the right to form governments through free and fair elections, a high level of transparency and accountability in the public administration, efficient and good governance, strong progress in fighting corruption, a free and genuinely competitive economy, strong social institutions, and all in all, a country with free, proud, prospering, and happy citizens. To make this dream come true, we tried on and on. We tried hard. We lost several attempts and had unrecoverable losses. But we never put up. We never gave up. And we never surrendered. We kept our dream of a better Armenia bright in our hearts and in our minds. And we never stopped dreaming and trying again and again and again. And finally, we succeeded. During the last days of this march, we started our new steps with just a few followers. We marched throughout our small but at the same time great country for a couple of weeks in the snow, the rain, and the burning sun. We then entered Yerevan, the capital of Armenia, with some 100 people. And in another 2 or 3 weeks, in the last days of our absolutely peaceful movement, there were over 1 million active participants in practically all the streets and squares of all the cities, towns, and villages of our country. We were enjoying the total support of our society, and therefore victory was inevitable. And now we, as a legitimate government of a democratic country, have a clear understanding and will to implement our mandate, to re-evaluate the so-called civil pact, the social contract between the state and its citizens, and to restart the process of state building, launching wide-ranging fundamental reforms aimed at eradicating corruption, creating transparent, accountable, and efficient governance, safeguarding human rights and the rule of law, ensuring independence of the judiciary, and advancing economic growth through a free and competitive business environment and a favorable atmosphere for investments. I want to be very clear, for Armenia's new leadership, this is not just a political statement. These are the core values of our revolution and ours personally, values that ought to come to life. Now, turning to the parallels. As I mentioned, we had faith in our mission. We put everything at stake. We stood firm and we won. And now we are going to act. This is, I believe, what we all should do in order to address the challenges that humanity faces today and to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. This is what the humanity needs to do in order to eliminate poverty, hunger, and malnutrition in all its forms, to ensure safe and affordable drinking water for all, to fight against diseases and to ensure good health and well-being, to provide inclusive and quality education, to invest in clean energy sources such as solar, wind, and thermal, to minimize disaster risks brought along by climate change, to safeguard equal rights for women, to significantly decrease income inequalities, to preclude all forms of violence, and so on. With faith in our mission, a clear vision, a strong will, and of course global cooperation and regional partnership, we shall win this battle. In Armenia, the non-violent democratic revolution has unleashed new opportunities and instilled a new sense of hope, which will help accelerate our implementation of the SDGs. According to the UN and the SDG framework, an accelerator is an intervention that removes bottlenecks and systematic barriers to SDG implementation. In this sense, the revolution is our greatest SDG accelerator of all. It has removed the single largest bottleneck to sustainable development, the lack of political will. Mr. President, Armenia's voluntary national review encompasses the key circumstances and factors underlying the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the processes and key findings of a 6-month detailed study of the country's policies and performance, along with multi-stakeholder participatory discussions. The report starts with brief highlights about the recent economic, social, and political developments in Armenia, in order to form an understanding of the context in which the voluntary national review took place. The discussion draws on Armenia's experience of SDG nationalization, currently in progress, with the countrywide participatory effort, as well as on the SDG implementation effort with due consideration given to the discussion of the role and processes of voluntary national review in Armenia. The VNR process in Armenia was complex, as it was in many other countries, and involved a number of interrelated efforts, which can be grouped as follows: A, policy effort; B, data effort; 3, institutional effort; and D, dialogue effort. The report looked at the national strategic framework, including sector-specific strategies and policies, and its linkages with SDGs in terms of coverage of the 3 dimensions of sustainable development: economic, social, and environmental. The strategy shall be supported through an institutional framework to move SDG nationalization and SDG implementation efforts forward. Armenia has developed a dedicated institutional framework, including post-2015 Task Force, National Council of Sustainable Development, SDG Nationalization Interagency Task Force, and National SDG Innovation Lab. The key findings of the VNR in relation to SDG implementation in Armenia are discussed in detail, including areas of progress, areas of concern, challenges, good practices, and innovations and opportunities for solutions. There is a particular focus on the goals and targets covered under the main topic of the UN High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development: transformation towards sustainable and resilient societies. The transformation towards sustainable and resilient societies requires a shift in approaches, mechanisms, and modes of cooperation. It is not about only government policies or actions, but also about real and active involvement of every member of society, businesses, and civil society organizations. The fact that the VNR process coincided with the process of formation of the new leadership in Armenia has provided a strong momentum for multiplying the SDG effort and searching for new ways to further acceleration of SDG implementation. The VNR provided a clearer picture of the situation and added a sense of urgency, which certainly is a strong motivation to multiply our efforts with greater efficiency and effectiveness. The VNR is a good chance for our government to assess the works done in the scope of the SDG and shape opportunities for innovative and impactful solutions towards achieving the vision of a new Armenia, as we call it in Armenia. Our goal is to achieve real changes in Armenia, which will ensure freedom, happiness, and prosperity of our citizens. To conclude, I would like to reiterate that we are fully determined to implement the most ambitious reforms. We believe, however, that the international community will share this journey with us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, and for your information, Armenia's VNR is available there, so any of you who wants can get a copy. Thank you very much.
I thank His Excellency Ararat Ms. Zoyan for the presentation. I now invite delegates to have an interactive dialogue with the presenting country. Before I give the floor to the first speaker, once again, I would appeal to delegations to observe the time limit of 2 minutes for each intervention. I give the floor to the distinguished delegate of Greece.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I would like to congratulate Armenia for this excellent presentation. And my question is the following. Would you please elaborate on how Armenia's standing as a middle-income country, as well as a landlocked developing country, does that affect development cooperation, in particular regarding transportation and infrastructure projects? And this having in mind the geomorphology of Armenia being a mountainous country with a very special ecosystem. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Greece for her intervention, and I now give the floor to the representative of Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Madam President. We regret that in its report, Armenia attempts to mislead the high-level forum and tries to justify its failure to ensure the socio-economic development by the so-called blockade. It is the Armenia's aggression against Azerbaijan that have led to the complete severance of relations between the two. It would be nonsense for a country whose territory is under occupation to engage with the aggressor in any economic relations. There has never been, nor will there ever be, a state in the world. Furthermore, in fact, the war against my country left the entire Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic of Azerbaijan being totally cut off from the mainland of Azerbaijan. Mr. President, successive Armenian government have manifested their inability to prevent socio-economic condition of its citizens from constant deterioration. Nearly 1/3 of the population is living in poverty, and World Bank statistics reveal that Armenia maintains one of the highest unemployment rates in the world. According to Transparency International, corruption in Armenia is endemic and widespread, permeating all levels of society. The poor economic performance, poverty, and unemployment deteriorates the demographic situation in Armenia, and according to some estimates, 30,000 people every year leave the country. In such circumstance, instead of allocating its budget resource to reduce poverty and unemployment, Armenia increased its military spending. Again, according to the 2016 statistical data provided by the World Bank, military expenditures of Armenia constitute 4.1% of total GDP, which makes the country one of the most militarized states in the world. There is no sustainable development for peace without peace, and no peace without sustainable development. Only after the withdrawal of Armenian force from the occupied territories of Azerbaijan, both countries and their peoples will benefit from the prospect of cooperation and economic development, thus enabling them to successfully implement the SDGs. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Azerbaijan for his statement, and I now invite the representative of Lebanon to make an intervention.
Good morning, and congratulations for the excellent presentation. My question is, how does the government in Armenia prioritize youth policies in the implementation action of the 2030 agenda? Thank you.
Thank you, and I now invite the delegation from the Women's Major Group to make an intervention.
Thank you, Chair. Excellency, it has been very interesting to listen to the presentation from my country and to participate in the session to present questions from civil society. We civil society members appreciate new and democratic developments in Armenia. It is essential to Armenia's achievement of the Agenda 2030 that economic development does not negatively impact on people's health, livelihood, well-being, and the environment. Therefore, we need inclusivity. We represent the following three questions areas for consideration. First, on environment. Armenia is increasingly a water-stressed country, and many communities do not have safely managed drinking water and sanitation services. The situation for rural areas is particularly problematic, especially in schools. How is the government going to ensure the right to safe drinking water and sanitation for boys and girls? On environmental protection policies and standards, can the government policy for the mining sector be improved to halt pollution from harmful metals and chemicals and ensure mining sites will be cleaned up, paid for by the companies, not the taxpayer? And finally, on this issue, when will be standards for secondary use of wastewater and improved policies for solid waste management? Second, on energy and housing. At least 30% of population in the country can be considered energy poor. Has the government developed any methods to encourage investment by the financial sector in energy efficiency and renewable energy for the housing sector, including in rural areas? We invite you to see the really interesting Armenian video on rural alternative energy in the UNEP tent at the entrance of the UN building. Third, CSO engagement. The NGO sector appreciated the consultations held in advance of the HLPF. However, some civil society sectors were still missing. How will the government engage a wider array of stakeholders in the future? We will be glad to advise. Thank you.
I thank the representative from the Women's Major Group, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Belarus.
Благодарю вас, госпожа председатель. Я бы хотела поприветствовать Армению с представлением национального доклада по устойчивому развитию. Нам известен в регионе очень хорошо инновационный опыт Армении по достижению ЦУР, и у меня есть ряд вопросов. Мы знаем, что в прошлом году в Армении была открыта экспериментальная лаборатория социально-экономического развития. И на базе этой лаборатории Армения делает очень интересные и, как нам кажется, очень полезные для государств региона вещи, эксперименты, которые могут служить хорошим, лучшим опытом и лучшей практикой для многих стран региона Европы. Я бы попросила армянских представителей, если можно, подробно рассказать, какие приоритетные направления работы вот этой лаборатории есть сейчас и чем Армения может поделиться с международным сообществом в этом плане. Благодарю вас.
I thank the distinguished representative of Belarus for her intervention, and I now give the floor to other stakeholders. I think it's the Women in Europe for a Common Future. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. And as a civil society representative, having worked with partners in Armenia for the last 20 years, let me first of all congratulate your country and your civil society on a peaceful, democratic transition to a new government, which after Georgia makes it the second country in the Caucasus to take that positive path. I have been asked to present some questions from Armenian civil society to you, and I will address 3 issues: women's position, energy, and forests. On energy, considering that the majority of households in multi-apartment buildings are considered low and middle income households, does the government of Armenia have financial support mechanisms to lower the financial burden for socially vulnerable groups? Secondly, on women, who are the motor of Armenia's economy, but hardly represented in decision-making positions, as we have traditional gender roles. In rural areas, there are often no preschools, and basic services are limited, so that women are often having to spend a lot of time on unpaid care work. So our question is, beyond the policies, how can you create more equality between women and men in Armenia? And finally, on forests, Armenia aims at 21% forest coverage within 50 years. This is an essential target, as forests contribute to water retention, to fight climate change. However, we see hardly any progress, and still many mining concessions have resulted in further forest loss. To reach these 20%, how can strong action be created? What are the plans? Thank you very much.
I thank Ms. Gabazon for her intervention, and I now invite His Excellency Ararat Mirzoyan to briefly respond to the questions from the floor.
Thank you for important questions. I'll answer in my native language, in Armenian, if you don't mind, and I'll give a moment to put up your headphones. Should I answer in the sequence as I want? Okay. Կսկսեմ վերջին հարցից, Եվրոպայի կանանց ներկայացուցիչից։ Ես ուզում եմ ասել, որ հիմա մենք մեծ կարևորություն ենք տալիս կանանց ներգրավվածությանը հասարակության հուզող տարբեր հարցերի եւ որոշումների կայացման գործընթացում։ Եվ այս պահին մենք քննարկում ենք օրենսդրական բարեփոխումների փաթեթ, որտեղ նախատեսում ենք կանանց քվոտան պարլամենտում ավելացնել եւս 5%-ով եւ հասցնել 30-ի։ Էներգետիկային վերաբերող եւ սուբսիդավորմանը վերաբերող հարցին ի պատասխան ուզում եմ նշել, որ մենք այժմ կոռուպցիայի դեմ խիստ պայքար ենք մղում, դուք տեսաք զեկույցից, եւ այդ կոռուպցիայի դեմ պայքարը վերաբերում է նաեւ էներգետիկայի ոլորտին եւ գազի եւ էլեկտրաէներգիայի տնօրինող եւ բաշխող ընկերություններին, եւ այժմ արդեն հստակ երևում է, որ արդյունքում մենք կկարողանանք ունենալ սակագների նվազեցում, ինչը բնականաբար կթեթևացնի քաղաքացիների բեռը։ Նաև դիտարկում ենք որոշակի սուբսիդավորման ծրագրեր։ Անտառների մասին, էկոլոգիական խնդիրը շատ մեծ կարևորություն ունի նոր կառավարության համար։ Նախկինում գիտենք, որ Հայաստանը ունեցել է դժվար ժամանակներ, նաև բլոկադայի պատճառով ստիպված է եղել բնակչության կարիքները հոգալու համար, առաջնային կարիքները հոգալու համար որոշակի անտառահատումներ անել, նաև եղել են չարաշահումներ այս ոլորտում եւ կառավարությունը հստակ ջանքեր է գործադրում անտառահատումները էականորեն նվազեցնելու եւ լայնամասշտաբ նոր ծառատուն կանելու ուղղությամբ։ Լիբանանի հարցին ի պատասխան երիտասարդության վերաբերյալ Հեղափոխությունը, որ տեղի ունեցավ Հայաստանում, իրականացրեց մեծամասամբ հիմնականում երիտասարդությունը։ Երիտասարդություն, որը ունի նոր կրթություն, նոր հայացքներ, նոր արժեհամակարգ եւ իր սեփական երազանքներն ու պատկերացումները Հայաստանի ապագայի վերաբերյալ։ Եվ բնականաբար հեղափոխությունից հետո այն իրականացրած երիտասարդությունը իր դերակատարումը պիտի ստանձներ նաեւ երկրի կառավարման մեջ։ Եվ հիմա Հայաստանի նոր կառավարությունում 17 նախարարներից գրեթե 70-80%-ը անկեղծ ասած հստակ ստատիստիկ տվյալ չեմ ասում, գուցե 75, գուցե 78%-ը 40-ից ներքև են, երևի թե 50%-ից ավելին 30-ից ներքև են։ Մենք ունենք երիտասարդ տարածքային կառավարիչներ, մարզպետների տեղակալներ, նախարարների տեղակալներ։ Ես վստահաբար ի հարցինի պատասխան կարող եմ ասել, որ Հայաստանը այժմ կառավարում են երիտասարդները։ Եվ կարևորելով իսկապես հարցը, եթե թույլ կտաք, նաև բոլոր գործընկեր պետություններին կոչ եմ անում, որքան հնարավոր է շատ երիտասարդների ներգրավել որոշումների կայացման process-ում։ Հունաստանի հարցինի պատասխան։ Դեպի ծով ելք չունենալը հսկայական մարտահրավեր է ցանկացած զարգացող երկրի համար։ Այն ակնհայտորեն բազմապատկում է արտահանման և ներմուծման ինքնարժեքը, ինչը բնականաբար բարդացնում է առևտուր և դժվարացնում է զարգացման ներուժը։ Այդ նպատակով միջազգային հանրությունը այդ երկրների բեռը թեթևացնելու համար ընդունել է մի շարք միջազգային փաստաթղթեր։ Այդ թվում կարևորներից մեկը Վիեննայի գործողությունների ծրագիրը, որը անդրադառնում է այս երկրների մարտահրավերներին և առաջարկում է խնդիրների լուծման հստակ եղանակներ։ Սա ենթադրում է, որ ցամաքով շրջապատված երկրներին հարևան երկրները պետք է ապահովեն անխափան ելք դեպի ծով։ Ցավոք մենք գտնվում ենք մի իրականության մեջ, երբ մեր ելքը դեպի ծով խոչընդոտվում է և արգելափակվում է։ Եվ ես կարծում եմ, որ այս հարցը պետք է լինի միջազգային հանրության ուշադրության կենտրոնում։ Ադրբեջանի հարցինի պատասխան։ Ես հարցի մանրամասները կհասցեագրեմ, մանրամասն պատասխանելու համար կհասցեագրեմ մեր արտաքին գործերի նախարարին, ով նստած է ինձնից աջ։ Միայն երկու բառով ուզում եմ ասել, որ իմ խորին համոզմամբ մենք հավաքվել ենք այստեղ, որպեսզի գնանք դեպի համաշխարհային համամարտկային մարտահրավերներին միասնական ջանքերով դիմակայելու ճանապարհով։ Պետք է խոսենք այն ամեն ինչի մասին, ինչը մեզ միավորում է, ոչ թե բաժանում։ Պետք է կարողանանք կառուցել և ոչ թե շարունակել քանդել։ Այժմ իմ գործընկեր արտաքին գործերի նախարար պարոն Զոհրաբ Մնացականյանը ավելի մանրամասն կանդրադառնա հարցին և Բելարուսի հարգելի ներկայացուցչի հարցին SDG Lab-ի մասին կպատասխանի մարդով ներկայացնում է SDG Lab-ը իմ գործընկեր Էրիկ Գյուլասյանը։ Համեցեք պարոն նախարար։
I was given 2 minutes. Thank you very much, Madam President. I was given 2 minutes, but I think I won't even need those 2 minutes because it has been the spirit of the VNR to engage in a constructive dialogue and to avoid any politicization. Of course, I have no problem to engage in lengthy discussions about why the security of Nagorno-Karabakh and the status of Nagorno-Karabakh are so important. But I do that in different platforms, including with your boss. And so far as Armenia's certain problems are concerned, we have been quite openly discussing it, and in fact we have been acting in our country. We are very open to share good practices and experience with our good colleagues in Azerbaijan. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency, the Foreign Minister. Would you like to?
I would like to pass the floor to my colleague Eric Gulaza. Okay, out of time.
Will you be able to wrap it up in 1 minute?
Yes, please.
Okay, lovely.
I thank Honorable Representative of Belarus for the question, and thank you actually for the interest toward the lab. The lab has been established by the government of Armenia and the UN colleagues as a joint platform to support the acceleration and implementation of the SDGs in Armenia. The lab is, the philosophy of the lab is based on introducing innovation, innovative approaches, non-conventional approaches towards bringing acupuncture, targeted solutions to complex cross-sectoral issues. The lab is operating 4 sort of service lines. One is behavioral experimentation of the to-be policies before they are scaled out to the country level, where both success and failures are a good lessons learned for policy decision makers before it's spread toward the country and becomes a formal policy. We work towards, the second service line is work with data. As Honorable First Deputy Prime Minister mentioned, we pay attention to different segments for SDG implementation, and data challenge is one of the both opportunities and challenges we have highlighted, and we are working toward this. Third is actually the bringing in new means of financing towards SDGs implementation. As we all know, SDG implementation costs a lot of finance and a lot of resource. No single government's budget, no assistance will be enough, so we are working to bringing in the new resource as well as optimizing the existing resource to get the most with our limited resources. And the fourth actually is the capacity building of our human capital, capacity building of our technology, and the capacity building of the whole sort of partnership we are bringing on. By the way, we have been to Belarus and we have shared with colleagues, and basically we are expecting a delegation from Belarus in September, and we are looking forward to working with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I thank His Excellency Ararat Mirzoyan and the entire team for their presentation, as well as all the delegations that participated in the discussions this morning.